Hello and welcome all to Tales from the Time Traveler's Tavern. I will be your guide and navigator, Mr.E, taking you on this informative journey. Informative of what? We still don't know. But that's why I have had the good fortune to bring along with me the colorful commentary of our internet guru, my good friend Toast.
Butter is optional.
There you go. And to the other side, we have Private Snafu.
Good day, Mr.E. Good day, Toast.
Alright, now we're going to go down a traveling line of science fiction or science fiction and all that kind of good stuff. Alright, now first and foremost, to address the newest concern. We are moving forward with the Tales from Time Traveler's Tavern podcast project without Captain Deadpaw. The reasons for this are numerous. The first and foremost of them being reasons of creative differences, as well as a certain life-changing event that has caused him to be unable to join us, as well as certain health issues. None of these are going to prevent him from being welcomed back into the fold, should he ever choose to join us. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Toast?
Just mention the fact that he won't be showing up for some of the stuff and he'll be back at some point in time.
And now on to today's subject matter. We're joined by a new guest today who is currently signed up to serve his country. I forget, is it part-time or full-time?
Part-time.
Part-time. Okay, so he's a weekend warrior. And in the tradition of using misnomers here, we're going to call him, should we go with just private or private first class?
Just private.
Private Snafu. Welcome to the program, Private Snafu.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Toast, anything to add?
If I did, it'd be using a calculator.
Haha.
One of the things we wanted to discuss in today's subject matter is something that recently happened. A YouTuber by the name of Pewdiepie. His first name is Felix. Anyway, there were claims made about him in the Wall Street Journal in which they were citing him as being anti-Semitic and just all of these ridiculous things. The only time I've ever heard of anyone from the Scandinavian Peninsula being anti-Semitic is, you familiar with the Dudesons, Snafu?
Not really.
Okay, so the Dudesons were the stunt group. Actually, I think they were out of Sweden. No, Finland, I'm sorry, they were out of Finland. And they were friends with Bam Margera and the Jackass crew. But before they started doing anything with them, started doing just by themselves. They're just, nutcases from the Arctic Circle, basically. But they had a neighbor that they absolutely hated that they actively referred to as Mr. Hitler. Nobody who's from this country, as far as I know who that guy is. Especially since whenever they would edit him, they would edit a still of Hitler's face over his face. But it's the only time I've ever heard of a Scandinavian being referred to as a Nazi. That I'm aware of. But anyway, so the Wall Street Journal, in order to generate clickbait effectively, started talking to Disney and YouTube about how he's this anti-Semite because of a poor choice in joke that he attempted to make.
Not once.
What do you mean not once?
It's not a single incident.
Oh no, it's not a single incident, but I think it's singular in its intent, is the thing. There were a couple of other comparisons that he made with, what was it, YouTube Heroes?
I don't watch his stuff.
He was making comparisons, saying they were kind of like Nazi youths, and there were a couple of instances where it was just a little bit too close to anti-Semitism, but at the same time, that wasn't necessarily his intent, or at least it couldn't necessarily be proven that it was his intent. However, if you cut up his content enough and pull all context away from it, it looks really, really bad. So that's exactly what the Wall Street Journal did, because media has been trying to target him for a while, because he's the number one YouTuber in the world. So of course, he's going to gain them some relevance every time they lose it. Any way in that you'd like to offer up?
You're making it sound like the New York Times went and said, okay, everyone get together, we need to figure out a way. Also, his name is listed as either Kojelberg or Schelberg.
Okay.
Depending on who's saying it.
Okay.
But basically, you're making it sound like they got together and had a meeting and said, we are going to nail him because we are losing customers and we need to we need to nail him to the wall in order to get them back.
Well, I know that that's the way he makes it sound.
Right.
That's not necessarily what I'm saying. What I am saying in that regard, though, is that mainstream media in general are people who will happily destroy anybody in order to keep selling their media.
A very cynical point of view, because, a good example when I was using with some other people I know is the BBC. As far as I'm aware, the BBC is still federally funded. Not here, obviously.
Okay.
And
Government funding.
Yeah, and they don't need to worry about people paying attention because they have their funding no matter what.
Right.
So when they go out and they tell a story, they try to tell a story as unbiased as they can because it's the best way to keep people watching.
Right.
For them. You're making it sound like all American media is out to spin a story and has no problem destroying people for no reason just to keep themselves relevant. One of the first questions, because I didn't look into the story, but I looked into it just a little bit because I was kind of curious. I mean, you're saying that if you remove all context from stuff, that his stuff looks bad. Another way of looking at it is, I mean, Disney dropped him as well.
Disney dropped him after being approached.
Right. Now, why would they? They made a cartoon that is still out there called Education for Death.
Ah, yes, I
which
remember.
which is a Nazi cartoon.
Right.
They did it during the war, and it wasn't propaganda against Germans. It was more or less it's kind of bleak over there, that sort of thing. It's not like they're evil. It's just
this is what's happening over there, kind of.
And it is slightly slanted. But if you remove all the context from it,
it looks horrific. Yes.
Actually, it's not even all that bad.
No,
because I haven't. I've watched it. It's not terrible. They don't make anything too awful in it.
Well, I mean, the point where the doctors are about to take away the kid to kill him because he's sick. I mean, there's something to be taken away from that, but
that's been done by a lot of different groups throughout time.
Oh, yes, definitely.
But back to the point, when it comes down to what some people were saying was when they looked at some of the stuff, there's obviously a watershed incident that caused people to basically point and go, this is too much.
Right.
Because, to flip things around, it looked as if he was using Nazi imagery and Nazi symbolism as shock value to get people to pay attention to him, which would be the same way as saying he's willing to do whatever he can in order to stay relevant, no matter who he destroys.
Right, and that's an argument that could be made, and I am not against making that argument, or at least listening to it. What I am saying, however, though, is that we have had that in several instances in every media platform in this country, where even when they're wrong, even when they're flat out proven wrong, they just kind of shrug it off. They don't even own it, even a little.
It has been done.
But it's rare, is what I'm saying. It's not as prevalent. The what's the word I'm looking for? Truth in journalism. The essence of journalism in and of itself is no longer a relevant point.
And hasn't been since Thomas Jefferson.
And that's... Well,
because Thomas Jefferson himself said you can't believe anything printed in these newspapers anymore. It's all lies. Or something to that effect. I could look it up, but I don't care.
You know, one thing these YouTubers are doing, though, nowadays, is they're trying to be as edgy as possible. And I see it as Pewdiepie was just trying to be edgy, but he accidentally crossed a line here.
He did cross a line. He did cross a line, and he admitted that he crossed a line. That's the thing. Is he screwed up and he admitted it.
Yes.
And they were still howling for his blood. And that's the part that bothers me. Is, if you screw up, you screw up. It's what happens.
What did they do to it? Because you're making it sound like they have completely ruined his life.
Well, no, they didn't. But the fact is, it looked like they tried, is what I'm saying.
I see. From what I read, because again, I didn't really research any of the stuff, it looked like several of the outlets went, yeah, he was making some off-color, some racist, possibly anti-Semitic comments.
Right.
And they're like, and this isn't right.
Right.
And yes, it was brought to Disney's attention, and Disney dropped him.
Right.
And Maker, which is owned by Disney, dropped him. Because they don't want to be associated with the Nazi imagery. Partially because they have been associated with it before, and they're trying to get away from that.
Right. Well, that and
Fake Volkswagen.
That, and they also have someone, at least last I knew, they still have, what the hell's his name? Eisenberg in charge, right? Eisner, that's it. Eisner.
I don't know. But like it says, so they brought it up to Disney. Disney dropped him because they didn't want to be associated with it.
And I'm not saying that...
So, and I also heard that YouTube took away his YouTube Red channel.
Right.
Which is a subscription.
Right.
And they took away one of his side channels that wasn't actually anything majorly important, but his main channel
is still there.
Yes. The one that actually the one that makes him his money.
Yeah.
The one that actually gives the fame and notoriety that he's looking for. They left that one alone.
I think they wouldn't have left it alone if he hadn't issued the apology, though. That's what I'm trying to say there.
See, that's all theoretical,
right?
Because it's not as if it was that one day he makes a statement, the next day someone goes, hey, that's anti-Semitic and racist, and then the next day Disney drops something. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. There's a long progression of stuff.
Right.
So it's he had plenty of time to when someone goes, hey, you shouldn't say that, to go, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I went too far.
Yeah, he did sit on it too long. I'll admit that as well. But I'm trying to go back to the point of truth in journalism, because they said that he was unavailable for comment. After they went to press, then they went and tried to get a statement from him.
Are you sure they didn't try to get one before?
This is what I'm saying, is that he claims they didn't try to reach him at all. I'm not saying that that is in fact the case, but if it is, that's horrific.
No, horrific would be if they showed up at his house, bang literally for his blood, not figuratively.
Well, okay,
That would be horrific.
Fine.
This is just a little shady.
But that's where I'm going with this, is that we just accept this all the time. We accept it out of our media, we accept it out of our politicians, we accept it out of our religious leaders, where it's flat out, they're going to do what they're going to do. And nobody holds them accountable anymore. Not even themselves.
Because if you try to, you get labeled. If you try to hold someone accountable for what they should be doing, the first thing they'll ask is, well, who are you to judge? You know, what gives you the right? Especially if they're a judge, which is funny. But I mean, there are times when you get that where someone will do something and be like, hey, that's not right. And someone will, the person who has just done something, I won't say something wrong, but someone who has done something will look at them and go, well, they'll look at you, they'll look at you and just say, well, who are you to judge?
Right. Let he without sin, yada yada.
It's like one of the books I read that actually has a portion of that, where it's let he who is without sin cast the first stone, and from the back some guy runs up with a rock going, I'm without sin! It's a weird book. It's not a happy book either.
But going back to this, if you disagree with someone, I think that's okay. But eventually you end up with a point of extremism. In the case of politicians, you end up with someone who tries to show up and shoot them. It happened to Reagan, for God's sake.
And Ford.
Really? They tried to shoot Ford? I don't remember that one.
Oh, one of the guys I work with is under no-fly list because his uncle with the same name tried to shoot President Ford.
Really?
He says it's hilarious because he's actually on a government watch list, and he's also on a pistol team, like for competitive shooting.
Nice.
So whenever he goes in for registering, like either registering a weapon or registering for an event, he shows up, has all of his paperwork, and he's like, hi, I'm so-and-so. When you run me through the system, you're going to get a red flag. That is my uncle. He's like, here's the paperwork for this. Feel free to talk to the FBI. Here's the number of the guy you need to talk to. He has the whole thing down. He's like, yep, if he goes in to purchase a new handgun, it's like, what, it's supposed to be a 7-day waiting period?
Yeah.
He's like, screw it, 2 weeks. He deliberately goes in and says, okay, I'll do this. Okay, it'll be 7 days. Yeah, no, it won't.
2 weeks minimum, I'm assuming?
I don't know. He was just saying he builds in wait times.
I don't doubt it.
Because he's fully aware that because his uncle tried to shoot the president, he is under constant suspicion, even though his uncle's like 30 years older than him.
I was going to say, I mean, isn't it kind of one of those where it's unfair? It's familial profiling.
So when you go,
which is a phrase I never thought I'd put together.
It's not familial profiling. Because they have the same name.
So they're just profiling the name and flagging that?
No, they flagged the name. They flagged his name. Whenever that name shows up in a database, they immediately look at it because someone of that name tried to shoot the president.
Okay. So here's my other ask about that, though. Once his uncle's dead, is that going to stop?
Probably not.
Why not?
So, different story. My mother does payroll. I'm sorry, I haven't told you the story. So my mother does payroll, and the one day a guy comes in and he's like, "Yeah, I don't understand what this charge here means." My mother looked into it, and it turns out that he was having back taxes removed from his paycheck. She's like, "Well, did you not pay your taxes 1 year?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "You've been handling it for a number of years now. You'd know."
Yeah.
I mean, not like she's doing his taxes, but she's doing payroll. Well,
so she'd be doing tax withholding.
Yeah, he had someone look into it briefly, and he found out the reason why was an uncle that he was vaguely aware of had his Social Security number and was using his name and Social Security number in Arizona.
Identity theft.
Yes.
Gotcha.
But he can't prove it's identity theft because he's related.
What? How does that make sense?
Because it's his uncle, they can't prove that he didn't give it to him. Then it's not identity theft. Just like a friend of mine's wife, her mother did the same thing. She would put bills in her kids' names, deliberately misspell their names, so that way the bill wouldn't show up on certain paperwork. So that way she could get out of paying the bill because the bill isn't in her name. It's in her child, it's in her kid's name.
Yeah.
But because the bill is misspelled, they're not going to go and search for them.
Right.
Found that one out when a friend of mine's wife tried to go in, I think it was for a cell phone bill. And they're like, "Oh, well, we have this one here," which had her name, her Social Security number, and her address. But the address was actually changed to her mother's address. And she's like, "I didn't do this. Like, we have no proof of that." So she basically had gotten stuck with paying the bill off. And she also had a couple of choice words for her mother.
I imagine. All right. Well, on that note of fact, validation, and verification, any other shuns we should add to that? Parting words, Snafu?
I don't know. It's above my pay grade.
Okay. And toast?
I can't believe it's not butter.
All right, then. Once again, this has been your navigator and guide, Mr. E. Thank you for joining Tales from the Time Traveler's Tavern. So that's it.
You've got to fix the boat, hook it on and swim. sing